Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to Aesthetic Imaging Video Tutorials. We are here on the second part of the video that nobody watched. I mean, the video formerly known as Banana on a Plinth, which is now just creating a simple scene in Blender 2.82. Yeah, last week we did the modeling of this scene. If you haven't seen it, which according to the numbers, you haven't, go check it out. Yeah, we modeled everything here, and now we're going to be working on the texturing. Now there's a lot to get through. It's all going to be procedural except for our floor plane. That's going to be an actual image texture. Yeah, let's just get right into it. So we're going to go into material preview here, and we're going to start from the bottom up. We're also going to do from the least complex to the most, which just happens to be from the bottom up. So we're going to click on our floor plane here, and we're going to go to New, and right away we're going to call this Floor. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to click in the corner here. We're going to open this up, and going to go into here, line up our view so we can see our floor better, and we're going to hit N to get rid of that, and T to get rid of that. All right, there we go. So in this window, we're going to go up to here and turn this to Shader Editor. And we have a principled BSDF right in there. So what we're going to do, yes. For this, I have Node Wrangler turned on. If you go to your add-ons and just type in Node, you'll see Node Wrangler. Just make sure that's checked on. And there's a couple keyboard shortcuts that are kind of hand in hand with Node Wrangler that I'll be going through. All right, so we're going to click on our principled BSDF, and we're going to click on Add Texture Setup. And this will add a image texture, a mapping node, and a texture coordinate set to the UVs. Now, one thing we want to do with our floor plane is make sure that the scale is evened out to 1. It is not. So if we click on our floor plane and do Control A in object mode, if you click on scale, that'll set everything to 1. All right, so for this image texture, we're gonna click open, and here I have textures. I'm gonna go in the wood, and I have this laminate 8. I'm pretty sure this is from textures.com. As you can see, there's a bump and a displacement. But we're not going to use them. We're going to use this single texture here. All right, so first thing when we bring this in, we'll notice that it's way too big. So we just go to our scale, and scale it up. Scaling it up makes it smaller. All right, maybe a little bit bigger still. Yeah, just something like that. So now what we're going to do, we're going to select our image here. And we're going to duplicate it by hitting Shift D. And we're going to hook this up to the vector. And we're going to Shift Control click on this. Remember, with your Node Wrangler on. And this will show you what exactly is happening to your texture. Let's take all of these and move them over. We're going to need some room. All right. So here for this one, we're going to add a color ramp. So Shift A to add something. We're going to go to Converter, Color Ramp. Add that on there. And as you can see, we now have a black and white image. So we're going to be creating the roughness map out of this image. So what we want to do is maybe bring up the blacks just a little bit. Like that. Maybe crunch in the whites just a little bit. All right, so for roughness, black is a completely shiny surface, while white is a diffused surface. Now we want the cracks in between and kind of the lower levels to be rougher. So we're going to click on this one and go up, and we're going to just turn that white. And we're going to go to this white one on the end, on the right-hand side, and just turn this down to maybe about something like that, and just crunch it in a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Now we just hook it up to our roughness and click on our principled BSDF and do Control-Shift-Click to add it back to our material output. All right, so that's the roughness. All right, so now we're going to duplicate this again, and we're going to hook this up to the vector, and then we're going to just duplicate this color ramp, Shift D, hook that up, and we can just go reset color ramp. Here, zoom in a little bit. If we click on this little arrow, we can go just to reset color ramp. Now Control-Shift-Click on the color ramp to see what's going on here. And we're just gonna, kind of bring this up and bring the white values in. And then we're gonna Shift A to add a vector bump. And it plugs it automatically into the normals. You don't want that. You want to plug it into the height. Now you can see what's going on here. We got some bump. Maybe turn that down a good amount. And we're just going to hook this normal to the normal. And then once again, Shift-Control-Click on your BSDF. Let's go to rendered, check that out. Maybe camera view. We can even make this a little bit darker if you want a shinier floor. You can see how we created our roughness and our bump just from a single image. That's pretty cool. All right, so let's go back into material preview. Let's bring this over. Now we're going to work on the plinth, and we're going to be creating the marble. Now our cloth is kind of in the way, so let's just click on that and hit H to hide it. Now let's click on anywhere on our plinth here, and we're going to add a new texture, and we're going to call this marble. Now here's where we start getting into some fun little stuff and things. All right, so we're going to Shift A. We're going to go to Texture and go down to Noise Texture. Then we're also going to go and add a texture coordinate. We're going to plug this from the object into the vector. Shift, Control, click to see what's going on. Let's zoom in here. The reason why I have this so small is because we are going to be using a lot of real estate up in the shader editor. All right, so we have our noise texture. We want to scale this down to make it larger. All right, and we're going to add a converter color ramp as well. And we're going to add a point, and then we're going to add another point. Whoop. Stop. So we're going to take this black point and we're going to move it up till it's pretty visible, like right about there. All right, and we're going to actually change this to white. We're going to take this guy, we're going to move him closer here, and we're going to darken it down. We're also going to make it a little bit bluish. And then we're going to take this guy, we're going to move him in. We'll set this to, close to white. Now we need more. So just take this guy, put him on the other side. And we're going to darken him down. And we're going to make it also a little bit blue, just to get some nice little color variation in here. And we're going to take this last white point and we're going to crunch it in like that. That looks starting to look a little bit like marble. We can turn up the detail and that looks even more like marble. And let's see, what we're going to do is we're going to Shift D to duplicate this, and we're going to add it right before our first noise texture. And then what we're going to do is we're going to Shift A and add a mix RGB. So we're going to add our mix RGB, and we're going to take the object coordinates and we're going to plug it into the second color value. we're going to turn up the scale just a little bit, like so. All right, so when we have this factor set all the way down to 0, that is this noise texture in its full textureness. If we turn this all the way to 1, then that is strictly just the object coordinate, and that's basically like taking this and just plugging it directly into here. By mixing them, we can add another level of detail into our marble. So maybe take our distortion and bump it up just a little bit. Get some nice little swirls going on. And of course you can adjust your colors. You know, get the kind of look you want. All right, so we got a nice little pattern going on. Very marble-like. So now let's take this noise texture, duplicate it, move it above here, hook this up to the object coordinates. Now we're starting to get a little sloppy here. So what we can do, we can hit, and this is with Node Wrangler, and this is with Node Wrangler enabled, Shift, right click, and drag. You can add a connection point. Boop, boop. And then you can hit G to move it around. We're going to be creating a lot of those in the future here. All right. So now we have this noise texture. We're going to Shift Control click on it so we can see it. Maybe turn the distortion to 0. And we're going to bring up the size. And we're going to add another color ramp. So let's just duplicate this one, put that there, click on the arrow, reset color ramp. All right, so now we're going to push in the blacks a little bit, and then we're going to crunch in the whites so we get this nice little just speckled pattern. Maybe put some distortion into it, get some nice little swirlies. Yeah, we'll keep the detail up. The larger this number, the smaller your swirlies will be. And we can use the color ramp to adjust how many there are, or how often it shows up. And that's pretty good right there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to add a mix RGB. So color, mix RGB, add that in there, add that on there. Multiply, and there we go. All right, so now we just have some extra little detail. Marble is very layered. All right, so that's our color. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this little multiply node and we're going to put it into the base color. Plug that back in, Shift Control click. All right, so we're going to take this noise texture and this color ramp right here, and we're going to duplicate that, and we're just going to move it down here. We'll use that later. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all of these. Yeah, we're going to select all of them, and we're going to hit Control G to put them into a group. All you have to do is press Tab, get out of the group. All right, so now we have some extra connections that we actually don't need. Like this can go directly into here, doesn't need to go into the second vector input. So we're going to tab back in here, and this vector going into this one, just get rid of it, and then take it from the first position and plug it back in. Now we can select this and go to Collapse and Hide Unused Sockets. Now when we tab back, we can just get rid of this, collapse, boom. There you go. So now we're going to go into Item, and we're going to rename this. So this is going to be Marble Color. And we can just select that, copy it, hit Tab, paste. Boom. We hit Enter. Now it's labeled as marble color. Cool beans. All right, so now we're going to take this and we're going to plug this into our little redirecting node and duplicate these. Again, put them down here. Plug this into our object coordinates. And we want to see, we know what this looks like. So we're going to change this one. So control click on that. And we're going to just kind of bring this back down. Maybe set that to 0. All right. So this, we're going to have to reuse this again. So let's duplicate this before we change it. Let's click on this. So again, with the floor, we want the kind of inner bumps to be really rough and the outer surface to be kind of less rough. So let's select this black point and just turn it to white. Take this white point and bring it down to about here. So now we're going to create another mix RGB. Color, mix RGB. And we're going to plug that into there. Multiply. And actually, again, we want to flip these, make this white. And this kind of like that. And maybe brighten that up just a little bit on both ones here. There we go. And then just plug that into the roughness. Turn our principled back on. Control Shift click. All right. We want our marble to be kind of shiny. All right. So now we're going to select these and we're going to Control G. And once again, plug this top vector into this noise texture here. Collapse. Tab out. And unplug this bottom vector. And collapse. And rename this. I'm just going to copy or paste the original marble color and then rename this to marble roughness. Select all that, copy, paste. All right, so now we're going to move on to our bump map. Plug that in. We're going to duplicate our noise texture. Actually, we're going to duplicate both of these. Duplicate our noise texture and our color ramp. Put that above. Plug that in. And this one, we're going to turn the distortion to 0 and bring the scale up. And yeah, we'll just leave it at the default there. Maybe bring up the black point a little bit here. All right, so now we're just going to add a mix RGB. From now on, I'm going to start going a little bit faster, just speed things up. So now we have our multiply, and we're going to set the factor to 1. And we're going to add a bump node, vector bump, bring that down, and we're going to connect that to the normals. Connect our BSDF back up, and we're going to switch this to height. And turn down the strength pretty good amount. All right, so now we're going to select our bottom part, our base of the plinth. We're going to go to our texture, and we're going to add our marble. And we're going to do that for this one. Marble. Marble. Make sure all our parts are set to 1 for the scale. Yep. Another thing, I don't remember if I did this in the first video, but I have the color of the world set to black. Just completely black so we get this nice little fall off. All right, so that's our plinth. That is finished. So what we can do is hit Alt-H to unhide it. If you're on a PC, I am sorry, I don't know what the keyboard shortcut is. All right, so right now we have this black material on it. So what we can do is just go in here. Now we can either just take this away and assign a new material, or we can just change this. We're just gonna change this. So we're gonna call this cloth, hit enter. And we're gonna come back and we're gonna come in here. We can actually turn off our gizmos and all that. And let's kind of get in here on that cloth so we can see what we're doing. All right, so we have our principled BSDF. So we're going to add, and I'm going to use the search bar for the most part now, just to speed things up. All right, so search, and we're going to add a texture coordinate. Texture coordinate, pop that over there. We're going to search another noise. We're going to be using noise a lot. And in fact, that's pretty much the only thing we're using. All right, so we're going to connect this to the object. And then we're going to also add a color ramp. Nope, not vertex color. Color ramp. There we go. And we're going to plug the factor into the factor. And shift control click on that. So now what we want to do is we also want to add a separate XYZ. Separate XYZ. We're going to plug that in before our noise texture. And we're going to bump up the black, bump up the white a little bit, get a little contrast so we can see what's going on here. We turn up the scale. It kind of looks fine up here, but then when you get here, it looks a little crazy. So what we actually want to do is hook this up to the UVs. Now you can see that it is going perpendicular to the cloth here. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this scale up way big. Way big. All right, maybe like 405.9. That's still not big enough. We can add detail. And we can take the distortion. And this will actually, let's go to material view so we don't have to deal with that crazy cycles rendering. Oh, come on. You can do it. You can do it. There we go. Ha. So, I do not have an explanation for what is happening to our plinth, but it is something, an issue that I've never had before, but it's doing it. And if anybody knows why this is, I know why this is. It's because of this mix node in our normals. If I were to just plug this directly into the bump, we'd get it back. Now this only happens in material preview and Eevee rendering, but cycles it will look fine. If anybody knows why that is, I would love to know. I mean, I'm pretty new to Blender and all this stuff. So, all right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to disconnect our normal because that's going to slow things down. As you can see. So now we have our cloth and we're starting to get closer to what we want. We want really, really small, thin lines here. And we can bump up the black point and the white point here. All right, so we're going to be reusing this, especially this noise texture, a lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a, a value node. I'm going to put that above there. And we're going to plug this in to the scale. Now we're going to pay attention, 405.9. So we're going to type in 405 point fudge off 0.9. There we go. Now we can rename this to something like thread count. How about that? Let's move all this over. So now what we need to do is copy all three of these. Copy all three of these. Shift D to duplicate them. I'm going to plug the UV back into the UV. And our value, or our thread count, into our scale. But what we're going to do is, instead of taking it from the X, we're going to take the coordinates from the Y. And when we plug that in, oh. Now, can you take a guess as to what's going to happen next? We're going to add a mix RGB. Plug that in. Plug it in, plug it in. And we're going to turn the factor all the way up. And we're going to go to multiply. Look at that. We got threads. All right. So now we're going to go over to here. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add another noise texture. So texture, noise. We're going to add that in before our separate RGBs. And we're going to change the scale. Maybe be a little bit smaller. Maybe a little bit distorted. All right, so now we're going to add our little mix RGB, and we're going to do the same thing we did with the marble. And what we're going for here, let's zoom in so we have a little more control. What we're going for here is to just get a little waviness in these little threads. So if we click and hold shift, we can actually move this at smaller increments. And we just want to introduce a little bit of jankiness, a little bit of waviness to our, maybe turn down the distortion. There we go. Turn up the detail. And we're just gonna, it's gonna be a little difficult to get into here. I think something like 0.982 is fine. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this, boop, and we are going to plug this into, move these over, and we're going to plug this into our other vector. There we go. So now we have our X and Y both have that little bit of noise to it. All right. So now we're going to take, all right, so now we're going to do that shift right click to kind of add those little points just to make it easier. We're going to take all of these and we're going to move them up. First, what we want to do, move them over and add a color ramp. I don't know, every time I want to go into color to get a color ramp, but it's under converter, color ramp. There we go. And let's just preview this. All right, so we're going to take the black value and we're going to brighten it up just a little bit. We're going to turn it blue. And take the white value, bring it down a bit, maybe like 50%, and turn it blue. All right, so now this is connected to our base color. So we're gonna, still need more room over here. So we're gonna take this whole setup right here, everything except for this last color ramp, and we're gonna duplicate it. And we're going to connect all the necessary parts. So we're going to connect our UVs into our vector and then into the second color slot. Let's zoom out a little bit. And we're going to take the scale, or our thread count, attach it to our scale. And you see why we made this? Because if we ever have to go back and change like the thread count, we'd have to go into each one of these and change them. All right, so now we're going to select all of these, including that last color ramp, and we're going to Control G. Let's see, clean this up a bit. Take this second scale out and plug the first one. Plug the first one back into here, and that should be it. So now we can collapse, tab out, unplug this second scale, and collapse and get rid of all those unnecessary guys. All right, so now what we want to do is actually take all these again and duplicate them again, because we're going to use this for our bump. All right, so like with the last one, we want our black points to be white and our white points to be gray. Something like that, maybe. Now, we can select our black point, click on the color bar, and we can select this eyedropper, and we can just boop it right there. Do the same with the white point, boop it on that side. Now you have mirrored ones, and you could have actually just duplicated that one, but you know, tomato, potato. So we're going to take our color and we're going to connect it to our roughness. Now you can see we have this variation on the roughness. I'm kind of liking it. All right, so we're going to group these together because we're done. So we can unplug this scale. We can unplug. Listen. All right. Let's cooperate. We're getting really, really slow here, and I don't like it. And we can just name this Cloth Roughness. Unplug that second scale, and we can collapse. All right, so another thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to this sheen, and we're going to turn this all the way up. Eventually. There we go. Let's hide everything that's not our cloth. And that really didn't do much to speed things up. Yeah. So you can use Blender on a 2013 Mac, but it's not going to be pleasant. All right, select our cloth again. Go over here. Plug the scale into the scale. Like so. Control Shift or Shift right click. And we're going to plug this into our vector and plug this into our second slot. Shift. So now what we're going to do is switch this to rendered, because we're using another multiply into our bump and it's going to not like it. And again, plug that into the height. Maybe turn the sheen down a little bit. The sheen is for like really shiny cloth materials like satin and stuff like that. They're going to have a lot of sheen to them. We'll maybe make it about halfway, 50%. All right, so we are almost done. So let's just take all these. Include these little redirectional nodes. Control G. All right, so this is cloth bump. So now we have our 3 textures that we needed. So now we're going to hide our cloth because, once again, that's going to really mess things up when we go back into material preview. And let's get our banana all lined up. Now, if you remember on the last episode, we have a couple modifiers on here. We can turn off our simple deform, so we have a straight banana again. Now this is going to be a very complex thing that we're about to do. So we're going to go to new to add a new material, and we're going to call this banana. So we are going to add a texture coordinate. We are going to add a noise, but actually not yet. So, And we're going to do a color ramp. All right, we're going to plug this into the object and see what we're getting here. Also, we need a separate XYZ. Bloop. And we actually want to put this on generated. All right, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's get our little texture situated here. So what we're looking for is we're going to create a color gradient that goes from a brown on the stem to like a yellowish green to our yellow, and then back down to yellowish green to brown. So to do that, we're going to take this white point and we're going to make it black as well. Then we're going to add something. We'll just make it really green right now, just so we can see what we're doing. Make it brighter. I'm going to pull that closer to the end here. Now we just want, stop. We just want our black part to be right here on the, just on that little thing. All right, so now we're going to create another little node here, and we're going to move that over to about there. And we can select that color. Now we're going to add another one. Whoops, wrong one. We're going to move that over there. Maybe turn this to yellow. Add another one. All right, so we're going to take our noise texture down here, and we're going to add it in here. And then we're going to add a mix RGB, put that in there. Plug the generated into the color 2, and turn up the factor. Maybe turn up the scale to make it smaller. Turn up the detail if you want. Distortion maybe a little bit. All right, so now we're going to have to go in and kind of readjust. So you can see what we're doing here. It's adding just a little bit of distortion at the ends, because it's not a completely perfect gradient. All right, let's start making this the actual colors we're going to want. Something like that. We can take the second yellow and just do the eyedropper on that. We can take the eyedropper and just select that guy. And for our last point, we can do the same thing. All right, so that's our banana color. Now you notice if we go to Simple Deform and turn this back on, it stays with our geometry. So now what we want to add is another noise texture. So we're just going to duplicate this guy, connect it, and we're going to connect it to the vector. We're going to connect it to the object. There we go. And we're going to turn the distortion down to 0. Turn up the scale. And turn up our detail. So now what we're creating here is the brown speckles. So here we're going to add another color ramp. Plug that into there. Let's take a look at what we're doing. Zoom in here, get a better idea. All right, so we're going to kind of do this the same way as the marble. We're going to have like kind of like a gradient, crazy little gradient going on. We can make this brown, maybe make it a dark brown, almost black. Can add another point. And this is going to be like a lighter brown, but still dark. And then our last point is going to be another darker brown. You know, we're just giving it a little color variation. We can crunch these in if we want. Kind of adjust how this is going to look. Maybe turn down the noise size. Maybe make this middle one a little bit darker. Yeah, I think something like that. So we're going to create another noise texture. We're just going to duplicate this guy. We're going to move this down here. And for our noise texture, we're going to plug it into the object. Control-Shift-Click. And we're going to add another color ramp. Converter color ramp. And we're going to crunch up the black point. And crunch in the white point. Like so. Maybe bring down the scale a little bit. And then we're going to add a mix RGB. We're going to plug this into the top and this into the bottom. And we're going to plug the color into the factor here. And we're going to connect that up, see what that looks like. Now we have our little brown speckles. And we can also change how brown the banana is. Just a few simple clicks. All right, so now we're going to take this mix RGB and we're going to connect it into the base color. And let's see, what are we going to need? We're going to need this guy. So duplicate that, bring that down. These guys. And that is it. So we're going to shift right click on these again. All right, and we're going to shift right click on these up in here, and we're going to select everything, including those two last points that we created, and Control G. And of course, name this banana color. Collapse. All right, let's move on to the roughness. Duplicate this again, just move it all the way down here. And I don't think we actually need this for the roughness. No. So we're going to take this noise texture, we're going to duplicate it. Take both of these actually. Duplicate them, move them up. All right, so we want to hook this up to the object coordinates. All right, so for this one, we're going to base this off of the brown points, or the browning of our banana. So this black point gets moved up to white. We're doing roughness, so I'm going to kind of invert this and move this down. Like so. So now we're going to check out what this looks like, and we're going to kind of uncrunch this. We're going to change the black point to white, and our white point to kind of like a mid gray. And we're going to add a mix RGB. Mix RGB. And we're going to multiply that to, and we're going to add that together, rather. So we're going to darken down our second white point here. Actually, bring that all the way up. Take this second point, darken it down a little bit. And we're just going to plug this into the roughness, and that will be it for now. So once again, let's shift right click and drag. What I meant to do is that. So we only have it connected to these two. Now we Control G and name this banana roughness. All right, so now let's start working on our bump. And then we'll be finito. Actually, we don't need that. We can get rid of that. Maybe connect that back. All right, so now we have this. This was our brown spots. So we have that all set up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a color ramp. Color ramp. There we go. We're going to plug this into the generated coordinates. And we're going to do another separate XYZ. Plug that in before that. Take a look at what this is looking like. And we're going to take this and we're going to crunch it in like that. Maybe take another point. Make this pure white. Take another point. Drag it over here. At another point, we're going to take this one and we're going to turn it black. Just like that. And we're going to crunch in our other white point here. And then we can actually take another noise texture, just duplicate that, put that there. Mix RGB. And we can plug the generated coordinates into the color 2. And turn this up a whole bunch, and we can actually just readjust here. Let's see what this is looking like down here. We need to bring that out to about there. Crunch that in a little bit more. All right. So now this whole setup right here is basically a mask. So this is going to be our factor mask. What we can do is just group these together just to clean things up a little bit. So now we have this group here, and we can change this to normal factor. There we go. It's fine. Collapse and hide. This one we want to plug our object in. There we go. So we have this. Let's duplicate this. Plug it into the generated. And let's check out what it's doing. We're already starting to get what we want here. Now what we want is to add another separate XYZ. Boom. Put that into the Y. Just like this. And maybe scale is down. Of course, we want to add another noise texture to the beginning here with a mixed RGB. Plug that into the color 2. And now we're starting to get this kind of woody-like texture. Maybe turn down the scale. Now leave the detail up. Mess around with the distortion. And of course you can decide how much you want. All right, so that's one little bump that we have here. Now we want to add the overall bump. So again, we're going to duplicate these two guys right here. Connect that to the object. And let's check out what's going on here. And we want to just kind of we want to turn up our size. So we get nice little bumpies here. And that should be it for that one. So what we can do is take our mix RGB. So we have our mix RGB. So here we have our overall bump. Here we have our stem. And here we have our browning. So we need to mix 3 different guys together. So let's take this guy, move him below the overall, or yeah, leave it right here. We're going to add a mix RGB and plug in our overall bump and our, our little browning bumps. Maybe turn this down a little bit. And we're going to set this to multiply. So now we want to connect this guy to this. So another mix RGB. Mix that together. So now what we want to do is we want to create another noise texture. Or no, another color ramp. Plug that into generated. And a separate RGB. Or separate XYZ. And this black. And we want to add a couple spots in between. This is going to be pure white. Add another spot. Oh, come on. And this is going to be a pure white as well. Maybe crunch these in a bit. And this is going to be a factor for our second mix RGB. And we actually need to flip this. We need to do a color invert. There we go. All right, so now we can plug this right into the normal. Add a bump node. And we're going to plug this into the height. So switch this back to rendered. Check what our banana looks like. It is too much on our bump. Maybe turn down the strength. Let's look at it from our view, from our camera view. Let's bring back everything else. All right, so something that I actually forgot to do in this one, this is me coming back from the future here, is under render settings, color management, we can go down to look and set this to something like high contrast. And of course, we're going to have to kind of fix our lights here. Maybe make this one 500. Top light, maybe bring that up to 250. And this right one, bring that up to 250 as well. All right, so this has been creating a simple scene in Blender. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.